Welcome back, or welcome to the New Levels Coaching Podcast. Remember, we are the coaching podcast that brings the endurance world lots of inspiration and education so you can literally go away and run with it. As always, I'm your host, Lewis Moses, ultra trail, track and road running coach and founder here at NLC. And this week, by popular demand, may I add, I am joined by my other half, Gemma Hillier-Moses. Gemma recently won a big race in Chianti by UTMB. That was a 100k race. And the messages came flooding into social media and on some of our WhatsApp groups around a potential podcast episode. Truth be told, we wish we could have done this a little bit earlier, but Gemma and I have been a little bit under the weather, a little bit snotty off the back of our travels to Italy. So we have postponed it to this week, but this will be coming to your ears around about 10, 11 days out from Chianti. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to go at this twofold. We wanted to give Gemma's reflections from the race as an athlete and also touch a little bit on the training and the build up and also what she's been doing since kind of January time, which was the last time she was on the podcast. And we also wanted to give you a bit of a coaching insight as well. We don't want to give away all our secrets, of course, but a lot of people have been asking questions about what we did in the build up, how Gemma prepared for that. So I can give you a few coaching insights, but I thought it'd be brilliant to share Gemma's experience from the running side of things. So with that as a bit of an intro, Gemma, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking earlier, I was like, gosh, I haven't been on the podcast. I used to be a regular and now you've just had so many other guests, which are amazing. So I'm happy to hand that over to them. But yeah, I haven't been on, I think the last podcast I did was the new goals in, I think end of December or early January released it. So yeah, it's been a few months. Gosh, lots happened.
Lots has happened. We'll go on to what you've been doing since January in a while because we're going to backtrack to kind of your first races. I think you did share some of that on that podcast, like new goals. We talked about what you had coming up, so it'll be good to reflect on that. I always say it is good to reflect. I've also got a few of your recent trophies around the room for those of you who are tuning in on YouTube.
Look at this one.
That's Gemma's vase that she's brought back from Chianti. It's not, when I first looked at it, I thought it's a little bit of an eyesore, and when our niece walked into the house on Mother's Day, she said, "What is that?" But actually it's really nice. It's like a ceramic vase. It's got the Italian colours on there, and it's also got like a stamp of Chianti on there as well as the race distance and Gemma's finish position, and it's handmade as well, which is really, really nice. So it's nice to have that in the home. But I've also got your prize from the Ark here propping up my microphone because my microphone kept dropping down. This is a really nice one as well. It's made from recycled plastic taken from the ocean, I believe.
Or on the beaches, I think. The rubbish that's left on the beaches, and then they made it into that. And I've got a coaster as well for the age category win. So
nice. Yeah. When I first saw it on the stage at the Ark, I was like, what is that? And
it's
then
really cool.
Yeah, when they explained it, I was like, that's a really cool prize. So yeah, well done, Ark. That's a good it's a good prize, and it's a really good kind of initiative, and hopefully they're turning a lot more of that recycled plastic into good usable things. So let's kick off, Gemma. Let's go straight into it. How are you feeling 10 days out after Chianti?
Well, yeah, no, I was on a high, and then on Monday I just came down back to reality with full on cold and feeling awful. So yeah, it was kind of a bit of like, bittersweet type thing. But no, I'm feeling good. Yeah, proud of what happened, and then just recovering really and just getting back into normality, which is also really important. But yeah, it's been a bit of a rough week, but I'm glad it happened now rather than the week before the race.
When you come down with an illness, it's always kind of like back to reality with a bang. Anyway, when you come back to normal life after being on such a high, but then when you get an illness, it's like double whammy. You're like, oh God, this is real life now. And when I saw you tucked up on the sofa and kind of feeling a bit sorry for yourself, at least I thought, well, you have earned it.
Yeah.
So you had a few down days. Just touching on kind of going into the race, because Hainsey, a good coach, well, a really good friend of ours, as well as a coach at NLC, he messaged me saying it's better to get a cold now than before the race, which is absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And I know we were very conscious of, and every runner is, every athlete is, about coming down with illness before the race.
Yeah.
Did you have the same thoughts going into Chianti?
I did, yeah. But learning from a bit of experience, I tried to relax a little bit more. Actually learning from you, which is, I'm like, oh, not another thing I'm learning. No, which is a good thing. But I used to get maybe a bit more stressy about it, but there are a lot of things, especially with illness, that you can't control, but there are a lot of things you can do to help yourself. So I guess from a long-term view of it, I haven't actually been ill for a good like 8-9 months. And I think that, usually I get just the normal winter colds or flu type things, but I've done really well. And the only supplements I take is magnesium and vitamin D and then some iron. But I think that is known to help with this type of stuff, and sleep is really important. So we do get a good amount of sleep, like at least 8 hours a night. And there's sometimes you can't do anything about it. You're going to pick something up. But I think in the 2 weeks before the race, I was very conscious around first defense was my best friend, seeing if that worked, and then just trying to keep a little bit of distance from people who were ill, but also, knowing that I can't control everything, and sometimes it's stress that causes the body to feel run down. So trying not to actually stress about anything was quite important to me in that last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a really good place to start before we go on to kind of races. We won't just touch on Chianti, we'll go back to the art, because it was something you mentioned on the previous podcast about goals and, planning out the year and that sort of thing. But there was a message circulating around our WhatsApp group before big races about how to keep yourself illness free. Like a lot of runners spend time thinking about how to minimize the risk of injuries, but I think it's a really important point of how to minimize the risk of illness. You mentioned a few things that you did there, taking first defense, keeping on top of your supplements. We're not huge on supplements. Like you mentioned vitamin D, magnesium, iron. I think the 3 that you take.
Yeah, that's all I take. Yeah.
And that's kind of in addition to a very healthy, balanced diet, which I would say is one of the things that we do as well to make sure that we're kind of trying to prevent illness, is make sure we're eating well.
Yeah.
Sleep is a big thing for you, particularly when you know that sleep's probably going to be very disrupted in the last couple of days. So what does sleep look like? How do you make sure you're getting that good night's sleep in the build-up?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always just like 8 hours, a minimum of 8 hours a night if I can. And pretty much all year round, that's what we do. But I'd like more 10, but I have to work and have to get up for training before work. So yeah, in an ideal world, I'd be 10 to 12. But so sleep is really important. I don't nap or anything. I work full time, so I don't have time to nap after sessions during the day. But that sleep is just really important for me.
And sometimes you get more than 8, must be said.
Maybe 9.
You make the sacrifice of going to bed that little bit earlier. We often get questions around, I'm not a good sleeper. Is there anything I can do to be better at sleeping? Like, it's almost like it's a skill. It's not a skill, but I think there's certain things you can do that can help with sleep. What's kind of your sleep? Well, what's your sleep hygiene, as we call it? What does that look like before bed?
Yeah, I think I've been born a good sleeper. I've slept really well. I can sleep in like airport floors, like bunk beds, like dorms, like hostels, whatever.
That's great. But it's not helping these people who can't sleep.
But yeah, bedtime routine, I guess, like switching off from phones and that type of thing before bed, at least an hour. Technology, like I don't work on a laptop until like 9-10 o'clock at night, because you don't want to have all those things buzzing through your brain. So like, yeah, watching TV, I do watch TV. We watch a lot of good series in the evening, and that tends to be fine. And then I guess reading, but yeah, switching off from like we have a kind of rule of not talking about business as we're going to bed, because we have fallen into the trap of like continuing to talk like 9-10 o'clock at night about things at work, and that's not good for the brain, because you're going to sleep like buzzing, and then it's not very good for the next day, because you need a good night's sleep for productivity and not just for training but for work and life as well. So they're the few things that we do.
No blue light in the bedroom either. We don't have TV, don't put phones in the bedroom. We have an alarm clock. Well, it's Google, but it still does the job. The alarm clock was pretty rubbish, so we got rid of that. But yeah, that's another thing that potentially helps as well, and phones too tend to go away a little bit earlier, as you said. Yeah, so those things all add up. And then travel as well, because you were traveling somewhere, so you're getting on a flight. There'll be people doing that very soon. Big major marathons coming up, half marathons, people going abroad. It's becoming a lot more common now with these big races on the calendar. People chasing things like the major marathons or the super halves or ultra trail races, which are becoming more prominent around the world. What about day of travel? What sort of things are you doing to then minimize the risk further?
Yeah, I actually struggle a little bit with travel. I get quite tired and I tend to get headaches or migraines. Migraines are a thing, that I got only in the last 2 years, but I've managed to get on top and manage them now. But a lot of that's down to dehydration for me. So staying hydrated the day before travel and on travel day with electrolytes and lots of fluid is really important. But I do get quite tired. So now what I've kind of said to myself is let travel day be travel day. So rather than stress, like I hate it when you get to a new place and you're not settled in and you just want to settle in. So I try to reduce those stress levels by just being relaxed, control what I can control, stay hydrated, eat really well, take food with me. And that really helps in my travel day. And then the other thing is I did wear a mask on the flight to help prevent, the illnesses. And I wouldn't usually do that. I didn't to Gran Canaria on a training trip, but I just thought, why not? It's very uncomfortable. I don't know how we all did it in COVID. It's like, oh, I can't breathe. But yeah, I did do it this time, which I think was hopefully helpful. I think it might have helped. I don't know.
Type of mask did you go for? Elvis Presley mask or like Halloween mask?
Yeah.
And first offence as well, which we swear by when travelling, as you mentioned earlier. But also I think worth noting, little things that come into my head as a coach. I did pay the extra to sit next to each other on Ryanair. It pains me.
My mum and dad didn't though.
But for me, I'm reducing the odds of sitting next to somebody, and I'm an odds person. I like my statistics. So I'm reducing the odds by then getting sat next to you. And we obviously give you an aisle seat as well because you like getting up to walk around. Again, little things that can make a big difference. So I think about those things. And then when you're in the airport as well, it pains me not being afraid to pay for what you need. Water, it costs a lot more. Get it into you if you need to hydrate. When you get to the other end, don't start drinking tap water. Go and pay for bottled water. Even if it's in the airport, it's a little bit more expensive.
It is funny that though, because I said to mum and dad when we were in Italy, I was like, all bottled water, no tap water. And I think Italy might be fine, but it's just what we're used to. And then the day after the race, dad was like, oh, we don't really have much water and we all needed tea. I was like, just put the normal water in the kettle.
Yeah, crack on.
I was like, doesn't matter now.
Race is done.
It's funny.
But yeah, all those little things add up, I think. And,
Yeah.
It's just, sometimes it's inevitable that you come down and you get illness, you can't help it. It's just one of those things. It's life. But taking the stress out of the equation as well. I guess with training trips recently as well, we went to Gran Canaria, which we'll touch on. But on those travel days, I've realised for you that, you do tend to not respond too great to travel days. I don't think many people do. I think people are very tired after a travel day. So as a general protocol with coaching and training, we have an easy day going in, we have a rest day on travel day, and we have an easy day off the other side of it as well. It's almost like a bit of a taper, really. And I find that protocol in general for majority of athletes works really well.
Yeah.
Athletes don't like it because they're like, oh, I'm not training.
Well, I did that. I was like, Lou, I feel like I'm not really training that hard in the first week of Gran Canaria and I've only got a week to go. But you were like, trust me. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and I call it the zooming out lens. Zoom out. You've had travel. You're in a new place. It's more. It's a lot hillier. It's more technical. It's a lot warmer. If you just go there and just throw yourself in the deep end while your body's trying to adjust to this new environment, you're probably going to end up in a hole. And then in the second week, when you really want to get cracking, and I'd said to you that, I said, the majority of your work is going to come in that second week. If you're not I guess if you're not ready for that in the best possible way, your body isn't going to handle it well. You're not going to absorb the training and you're not going to get the adaptations we want. So if you go into the second week run down because of what you've done in week one, you're defeating the object of being there, in my opinion. And we see that at altitude quite often. People go to altitude, they hit week one, and then by the time they get to weeks 2, 3, and 4, where the real big benefits come from, they're done and they can't train and they've got low iron and those sort of things. So you've just got to be a little bit careful around travel, I believe. And that's just learning from experience of doing it myself, watching other people, and also listening to feedback from athletes, because you see it with athletes you coach as well.
Yeah, it's respecting your body and not everything has to be hard all the time, and just giving it the time and respect that it needs. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that sometimes when they think about training. And often, like we say, it's the consistency. It's that you did a post about it on Instagram yesterday. It's like the little things that stack up, the bricks. It's not necessarily 1 week or 2 days, or it's a bit of everything. And that's really important to remember as an athlete. And it's good as an athlete that you have the whole wanting to train hard, because that's what makes people good. And that's why you need a coach to hold that back, because that isn't the recipe to success. So you need to train hard at the right times when the body's ready for it.
Keep stacking the bricks.
Yeah.
So we go back to January, end of January. That was the Arc of Attrition down on in Cornwall. And for those of you who remember that weekend or don't remember that weekend, it was the weekend we had horrific storms. And we got quite fortunate because we managed to look out with quite stunning weather on the Cornish coast that weekend. And just up the road, we were seeing pictures of like mini tornadoes in Newquay and places like that. So the Arc was your first race of the new year.
Yeah.
How did that go from your perspective?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I got second behind Sarah Alonso, and I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know how far I'd be behind her, and I gave her a bit of a run for her money actually, which was quite nice. Didn't manage to close the gap on some of the real climbs at the end, but yeah, I didn't actually go into that race. I felt quite poorly on the morning, if I'm honest. So I woke up in the morning with a banging headache, like pretty much a migraine. I have rice pudding for breakfast, usually eat my whole bowl of rice pudding because I can stomach rice pudding really easily. And I couldn't get much down me, could I? I had about 3 or 4 mouthfuls. And
well, I walked to the shop and got you paracetamol.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I'm ready for this race. Like, I've done the training, I feel good, feel ready. And then, this is not feeling good. But I thought, you know what, I'll take the paracetamol. I'll see how I feel on the start. And to be fair, it did start to ease, but I had a very cautious start. And we looked at it probably a bit slower than it should have been.
A bit slower than the plan that we originally had. But given how you were feeling in the morning, we kind of both said on the start line, look, just take this a little bit easier.
Yeah. And actually, it gave me quite good learnings for Chianti in terms of that feel, what a pace or a rate should feel like. So that was quite good. But then, yeah, after about an hour of running, I was like, okay, I feel a bit better now. Like, it still felt ropey for the first hour. And then I was like, right, I can get moving now. So for me, yeah, it was it was a step up in performance in terms of placing and not finishing that far behind Sarah. I think, and the points, you know, I got highest points I've ever got in a UTMB 50k race, which was really cool. But I think that I finished with a bit more to give. Like, I had quite a lot in that last 5k, and that was a little bit of learning for Chianti. It's like, I don't need to finish with that much left because, yeah, I probably could have pushed on or been a little bit quicker, a little bit earlier, and then pushed on in certain parts. But I think some of it sometimes is navigating the body that you're given on that day. And I knew I wasn't 100%. So getting to the finish and finishing the place I did, I was actually really pleased with that. So
yeah, good. I thought it was a good run.
Yeah.
The gap closed to Sarah to about a minute at one point. And Sarah was worried, you know, she was shouting at her team, like, where is she? How far is she behind? And that gap had closed from nearly 3 minutes down to, well, it was certainly over 2 and a bit. It's hard to tell from checkpoint to checkpoint. But you know, moral of the story is it was closing. She then extended it on the last section, which was the hillier section of the course. So again, like I like to do, I go away and analyse it. And I said to you straight away, look, you're fast enough. You were closing the gaps on the flatter, undulating. Actually, even in the sand dunes, you closed the gap. So it wasn't that it was flat, it was just undulating. And that's where you were closing the gaps on Sarah, who's one of the best 50k runners in the world. She was 4th at OCC last year, I believe. She's done very well on the Golden Trail series over the shorter stuff. She ran a 71-minute half marathon in Barcelona just after the Arc in February. She's clearly in really good shape. So it got me thinking. I was like, the plan was to always like increase the climbing after the Arc, so focus on the running first. We did like a faster block because you had the 5k on New Year's Eve. We'd done some faster work, we'd done a lot of tempo work ready for the Arc because it was a little bit more runnable. And then the idea was to increase the elevation and the climbing. I'll be honest, after that I said to you, we definitely need to. Like, the climbing's now something we need to work on. So we probably then adapted things and went to it a little bit sooner and put more of it in. But I knew you had the background, so I could do that. And I'm just interested to hear your thoughts, because that was my thoughts running through my head, is like, right, okay, you're fast enough. We need to get you stronger now, longer runs, climbing stronger. Did you have similar thought pattern?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's tricky with the Arc because that 4-mile section, I still actually covered it quite well.
No, you ran really well in that section.
And that's technical downs, which, you know, aren't my strength, but I'm obviously getting better at them. Especially I navigate the distance well enough. But yeah, I felt like, if depends on who you're comparing it to, and if I'm comparing it to Sarah, I need to get better at climbing. So that was the biggest thing. Like it's where do I want to go next, and what tools do I need in my locker to be able to do that. And that was the next thing. And we hadn't done any uphill treadmill sessions then. It'd all been around Leicestershire, so that's like hill sessions, up and down tempos, but around our hills, and there's no more than 100 meters of climbing.
Yeah, which suited the Arc, because the Arc didn't have anything more than 100 meters climb, just very steep.
Yeah.
So we knew the technicality of the course, and we knew it was runnable. So it suited that, but also we wanted to develop that speed earlier on in the year, so we could layer that onto the climbing. And then my philosophy of that is you take that speed into the climbing, you're in a better position.
Yeah.
You'd laid base work before that anyway. So that was my thinking. And I guess if we go back to your point about comparing it to Sarah, yes, Sarah is a fantastic athlete and she's very good at climbing, very good at descending, very aggressive. I wasn't necessarily looking at it saying, well, you're not as good as Sarah at climbing. What I was looking at was, well, for me, it was like the proof is in the pudding. You're fast enough because you can compete with the best in the world when it's flat and undulating. But actually where we can improve now, forget anybody else, is on that climbing and maybe making sure that we are strong enough for those climbs in Chianti where they are going to be a little bit longer, not a whole heap longer, but there's a lot more of them.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, like, and I recognise this as a runner, as much as you want to put everything in now, I've only been really a year in trail running. So like I've still got, it just takes time. Like you're going to need time to develop certain skills, and somebody who's got, 10 years on you, like you will get there, but it's like, you will get there and you can get there quicker. Or quickly, because you have that upward trajectory of doing something new. But it does take time. Like I can't expect all my tools in my locker to be 100% like sharp right now. I can see each race and each month I'm like, oh, this pit's getting better, this pit's getting better, but that all needs to just develop over time, and that includes mindset and psychology as well as like the physical side of things. So I'm in this for kind of the long run, and willing to give it that time to develop all these different things.
Yeah, and you can't develop them all at once either. But we did go to Gran Canaria for some warm weather training, and that helped, and we wanted to work on the climbing there. We wanted to increase the long run, and we wanted to do that on longer climbs, which provided the perfect environment. Also work on being a bit smoother downhill, not necessarily faster. We kept using that term, smoother. Yeah. Did you feel like Gran Canaria was a good preparation camp for Chianti, even though Chianti wasn't warm on the race day?
I was running like 25 degrees in Gran Canaria, and then Chianti was mud and water and cold. But no, it was. And the first year I went to Gran Canaria was last year, and I was such a novice. Like I fell on my first day. I've still got the scars on my legs. There was a lot of Lewis running in front of me and behind me going, you need to go faster. Come on, get your skills up. Like, I remember maybe some tears and some being like, oh, I love this, but this is hard, but amazing. So that's why we went back. And this year I loved it because it didn't feel like a training camp. Like we were there, just me and you, and it was a training camp, but we worked. I took the second week off work I read loads of books, which is what I like to do, and then was able to just recover from training. It was really nice because we had a nice balance of just getting out training. And what I like about the trails is it feels like you're exploring. Like every time I went out, it felt like an adventure. So like when I went out on my 5-hour run, I was like, I'm learning mountain skills here on my own because I'm going up this massive mountain. It's just me. What do I need to think about? How do I navigate this? Like you went back to the UK and I had a weekend in Gran Canaria on my own, and I did some of the course of the Trans Gran Canaria. So there was people on it, but it was like my responsibility to find my route, to find my way around, like get myself there and back. And I just quite like that. I felt like it's a nice way to spend your time where you're training, but you're also learning a lot as well. So there's kind of a few different elements that come into it rather than just fitness. And
it goes to show, doesn't it, what a difference a year makes. Like we laugh and joke about that year one, but there has been so much progress. It's often easy to forget where you were, but that was actually quite a nice reminder of where you were, because we could even look back at stats as well. We could compare routes and what you were doing last year compared to this year. And also look back and say, you know what, do you know that run we did that time when we climbed to the top of that mountain? We were probably running too quick the year before because it was new to us. And, and that's, I guess, where our strategy for Chianti started, because I started to really delve deeper into the climbing and the rates, and I always do that. But I felt like we were in a better position to do that more because we had more information. And I just said, I think climbing a bit too hard too early. And actually, if we slow those climbs down early on and just run steady, as we called it, and steady away, you just keep clipping away, I think you can do that for the whole race. We'll find out, because we've never done that, but we will find out. But I believe you can. And we kind of practiced that in Gran Canaria on the long run. And I said, look, just sit behind me. I'm just going to climb, but I'm going to do it like at a pace I feel like you can handle. And that was our first attempt at it. And when we looked at the stats, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. And it added up, and you actually came away from it. I was like, oh, I felt okay with that. And that was a 5-hour long run.
Yeah. I think it's really good because we can do that together. And I think I think we both get it, and you get how my body works, I get how yours, and then I have that trust in you because I'm like, oh, Lewis says this, and yeah, I think, and that kind of converted into Chianti. I was like, Lewis says this, and this is actually happening. Okay, he's right throughout the whole race. But yeah, I think it's testing things in training and experimenting with it. But yeah, those long 5-hour runs, I haven't done many of them at all, have I? Like over the last few years. So they are still new to me. But I think I'm finding that I have an element of durability anyway with them. But yeah, I mean, Gran Canaria, it's the huge climbs really that we did on that long run. So yeah, you learn a lot about how your legs cope with that, how your legs cope with the descents and just, yeah, that training volume, I guess, and what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, and you got a nice heat stimulus out there as well, because it was warm, up to 25 on some of the days.
Although you've got to laugh at that long run. So we went on the long run to Gran Canaria, and you were meeting me halfway because you were doing a 2-hour run. And I started off in a long sleeve, and Lewis was like, you'll be boiling up there. And I was like, I'm going to keep my long sleeve on because I've only got like a crop top underneath. Got to the top and it was snowing and sleet. And then I met you and it was absolutely freezing. So it does show with the mountains. Like I always have all the stuff in the pack anyway. But yeah, it was interesting. Like the week before, and I did a 3-hour run up there. It was like glorious sunshine, incredible. So
yeah, it was a high peak though, isn't it? It was driving up at a very, we obviously start at sea level from where we drive from. And then end up above 2,000 meters. So it does get high in Gran Canaria.
Yeah.
And that heat, so we carried on that heat protocol when we got home. I spoke to Doug from the Elite Trail team, who's been on the podcast before. If you've not listened to that podcast before, then head back and listen to it. It's really good. It talks about heat acclimatization as well as heat acclimation, two different things, which Doug explains really well on the podcast. So we'd obviously been out to Gran Canaria, where you'd been acclimatizing to the conditions out there, but we wanted to keep the heat acclimation strategy in, which means it's done out of that natural environment. It's done at home, and we chose the sauna, and you committed to that for a couple of weeks. And the reason for that is we wanted to try and maintain any heat benefits that we'd got physiologically, but we also wanted you to be ready in case it was hot in Chianti.
Yeah.
How did you find the sauna?
Oh, yeah, it was, like you say, it was good to test the heat, like for this race as well, because we may need to do it in the summer. But yeah, I mean, I started off with 20 minutes, ended up max was 25, wasn't it? And luckily I went to Burley Court, which is near us, because we only have 2 saunas in Loughborough apparently, and everybody in the sauna, so I go to a spa day sauna and I'm out in like 5 minutes. I can't sit still. Like, I asked my mum, she's like, how the hell are you sitting still for that long? But everybody in that sauna seemed to want to be in there for a long time. So I don't know why. People are seeing some benefits to it. So everyone was just talking to try and be in there for a long time. So to get to stay, you need to talk to someone really. But yeah, the first few times was quite tough. Like I had a heart rate monitor on, and last couple of minutes you can see it rise, but then I worked on my breathing work and saw it drop. And then by the time the last kind of 25 minutes stint I did, I think the Tuesday before the race, I felt quite comfortable in there. And now I do miss it, but it's hard to fit in with everything else. So I'd be going in an evening after I'd done the step machine. But I think it is actually a nice way to end your day as well. It's relaxing to a certain point, probably relaxing for the first 10 minutes, and then
then it gets hard.
But then mentally as well, it's quite good, because I was like, this is mental toughness. Like, you are building mental toughness as well. So I guess it kind of all comes together.
And a few people have asked about that strategy, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's different for everybody and you should trial it. And if you want to trial it, you should know why you're trialing it. There should be reason to it and there should be a purpose behind it. And also to give you an insight into how I created that strategy for Gemma, I spoke to Doug. Doug kindly shared his resources that are free online on their website. But I'd also, before that, I subscribed to a bit of I guess it's a kind of a newsletter type format thing. It's a subscription every month where it looks at analysing the science of the sport in ultra trail world, and part of that was looking at heat strategies. So I'd looked at that, I'd researched that, I'd gone further, I'd then gone to the papers that they'd analysed, I'd looked at the papers as to what they suggest, as to what the literature suggests, and then I went on to also the website the person's website who was providing that, I guess, literature review, and had a look at their strategies as well. And then from that, then devised our own strategy with what I know is available.
Yeah.
So a lot of thought goes into it. So I'm not going to say you should do this.
No.
I think that's wrong. If you are thinking about doing it, make sure you know why you're doing it, the benefits to it, the potential risks, and also understand your purpose behind it.
Yeah, because it does affect you. It fatigues you. Like every time I went in the sauna, I was on the sofa at 9 o'clock at night falling asleep when we were watching a series. And I think like we've done it. So the OCC in the summer was 30 degrees, absolutely boiling. We didn't do a heat protocol in terms of sauna. We spent more time outside, maybe 10 days and leading into the race to try and get used to that heat. But we did our last long run in rain in Chamonix. So we didn't use a heat protocol for that. And I felt like I coped okay with that heat. So it just shows that you can do it all without it. So yeah, look at your time, your lifestyle, and actually look at the research behind it and do it properly if you're going to do it and get the right advice.
Yeah, and for people who are saying, oh, well, is it beneficial to go in the sauna? Yes, it can be if you get it right. There is research to support that now. But still, to this day, the biggest benefits for you as an individual will come from training.
Yeah.
And if you get your training right first, you don't need to worry about stuff like that. This is because we felt like the training was right and it was going well and it could be hot on the day. So we were like, actually, this is a good time to put it in and practice it.
Yeah, it's like most people need to stop spending time looking at the 1% and just do the basics first.
Yeah, exactly. And we've done that for,
lots of
not
years.
just the year lead up to this, like years and years before that as well. So let's go into race day then. So Chianti comes around. You've done your training camp as such in Gran Canaria. The training's tapered down. You're starting to peak into Chianti. It was a bit of an A goal race. I would call it actually a B goal race for you this year, in the sense of we were focusing on it, but it was a little bit of a bonus in a sense of we didn't really know what was going to happen. It was a bit of a shot to say, what is it like stepping up to 75k? It falls in the 100k category, by the way. It's 75k distance, but it fell in the UTMB 100k category. So it was the first time you've done that. So it was a big focus for you in this in the spring part of the year, and it was a big focus for me. Like reflections wise, before we go into kind of the strategy, like how did you feel like it went for you? Stating the obvious that you won, but did it take you by surprise? Yeah, you elaborate on that rather than me ask the questions.
Yeah, no, it did. And everyone was like, were you emotional at the finish? And I was, but I was like, oh gosh, yeah, this is a bit surreal. Didn't expect this to happen. But the thing that surprised me the most, didn't surprise me the most, but everything you said to me that would happen happened.
And this doesn't usually happen in life. This is why it's such a surprise.
No, that does happen. But in a race that we'd never done before. So it's easier to do that as a coach in races that you've done before because you have evidence and you probably have evidence from everything else. And we were chatting on the run this morning, like you had a racing brain when you were an athlete, and we called you the tactician and the guy knew how to race. And I think that's massively transferred over to coaching, but we've learned together. But when I was running around, I was like, oh, okay, he's right. And then I was just like, you gave me instructions for certain sections, and when I executed them, I was like, oh gosh, Lewis is right again. Even though I'd done none of the course, so I hadn't done any course recce. I had no idea what this course was. The only part we knew was the bit that you'd ran and showed me a few videos on. So I had that knowledge. So yeah, it was a surprise, but I'll let you into a little secret. About an hour or two into the race, it did come into my head, I think I can win this. And I was still quite far behind first place, but I was climbing and I was like, I feel quite easy on these climbs, and some of the girls are breathing. I said, if I can carry this on, which Lewis says he thinks I can, then I think I can win this. But then I was like, you can't have an outcome thought in the race. I was like, get rid of that. So we used my sports psychology, and I was like, get rid of that outcome thought, because that's not going to be helpful. But it did give me some confidence. So yeah, surprised. Also surprised because a couple of days before I was like, I've not done enough long runs. So again, self-doubt is normal. Even, I'm a coach and an athlete. So yeah, it's quite normal. You think, I haven't done enough training for this. It's a long, I have ran for 7 hours once before, which is in the OCC, but I've not covered 47 miles and running 47 miles. That was the bit that I was worried about the most, because in the OCC, there was a lot of hiking and it's different terrain, whereas this was going to hopefully be all running. So I was worried that I didn't know if I could run for that long.
That's the biggest worry for any distance runner, I find, is the gap between where their final long run finished and where they feel like they will be on race day. And what I mean by that, if a marathon runner does 20 miles and they're running 26.2 on the day, their worry is the 6.2 that they've not done. Yeah. But you can't always close that gap, and that's what racing's for. So
it's absolutely fine, because I think I did one 5-hour run. The rest were shorter, and obviously we did some training back-to-back days, but yeah, I was more than fine.
And that's 2 hours, by the way.
Yeah,
it's 2 hours away from where you were, and a higher intensity on the day as well than in training. So worth saying, you don't need to do the race distance. You don't need to do, it's different for a 5K runner, of course. We're not talking about that. But as you go to these longer distances, there's method behind the madness of not going towards the race distance or race time. Definitely. Yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, and I think I said to you, I was like, I don't feel like I've done anything special here in order to win it. But I think that, there's moves that were made, and the body was, good on certain sections, and fueling was good. So yeah, it's kind of all of that coming together, isn't it, for that result? So yeah, it was very surreal for a while. And then I'm like, oh, actually, okay. Because I felt like, you feel like a bit of an imposter, don't you? Being in that position. But then you're like, actually, I've done the work and I deserve to be there.
Yeah, and you did deserve to be there. And one thing I said to you is believe in the process in the first half, and in that last part, then believe in yourself, because that's when you really need to believe in yourself. But we'll go a little bit into the strategy from my perspective. Firstly, I'm not going to focus on anybody else in the race, because it'd be unfair of me to do that. I don't coach anybody, and I don't know enough about them. So I try not to get wrapped up in what they're going to do. I purely focus on you. But what I do is I look at previous results and look for trends and patterns, and that helps me to see what I see as a story. So I see the story of the race unfold through statistics, and I do that by getting the results and comparing it to the course profile. And what I could see from the year before in Chianti was that the people who ran steadier and maintained a steadier pace throughout tended to run better, and women are usually better than men. So I actually went and found a few men as well who did that. Robert, who I spoke to also out there, Robert Hajnal, he ran pretty well out there, and he'd covered the technical section quite well. What I also do is I look at the sections and I grade them, or I actually reverse engineer this. I look at the time from that section, and then by looking at the time for that section and factoring in the distance and elevation, it helps me create what I call a terrain score. And that is basically a difficulty score. How difficult is that section? And when I saw that the difficult section came after 50K, I went straight to that section when we got there to suss it out. And I wanted to see why it was difficult. And I could see it was difficult because it was the more technical section of the course. It was more rocky. It was wet on the day as well, as you found. But then what I do is I run that section and I come back to you and say, well, it is technical and it is a bit slower. It's going to be your slowest section of the course, but it shouldn't be as slow as some of those people running the year before. The reason it's slower is because they've gone harder at the start. And that's what I was convinced about. I had no doubt in my mind because I'd seen the evidence from certain runners who'd ran faster in that section. And the proof was in the pudding that they'd not gone too fast at the start. So I said to you, let's stick to the strategy and let's do that. And I guarantee you'll be able to cover that section better than most people, and that's where the race will be won and lost, is from there. Well, actually, it can be won and lost earlier on because people have gone too hard. Now, thankfully, it played out like that, but it's not always going to play out like that. I'm not always going to get it right. I'm going to misjudge certain things, and that's fine. It's fine to get things wrong as a coach as well. But what I would say is that it's really important to know this type of thing. If you're entering into this world, I believe it's important to analyse it, but it's also important to execute it. Because it's no good having that plan if you don't go out and follow it. Because then that plan's a load of rubbish and we don't know if it worked anyway.
Yeah, and I think we were very in tune with the plan. I was like, and this is why process goals are really important, because Lou gave me approximations at checkpoints. So we discussed before, like, we hadn't done the course, we didn't know the course. So you've got to give 10 minutes probably either way. But I had the time 62 minutes in the first checkpoint, and I went through it and I was like, bang, 62 minutes. Like, and that's with just running to feel. So like part of me was like smiling because I was like, oh, Lewis is going to be happy. I've hit his time. Second checkpoint was the same. Third checkpoint was the same, bang off the time. And then actually, obviously, I then made up time on the other two, which was amazing. But it was that feeling early on of like, oh, I've achieved something already. And we've not even got to the end of the race. So that was really good.
But also we spoke about on the run this morning, and we were talking about it in a different context, talking about this just in general running, how good it feels when, one, people are coming back to you and you're the one progressing through. You get so much positivity from that.
Yeah.
But also when you start to see what you've discussed unfolding in the race, it gives you that belief of, okay, we've got this right. And that must be powerful within the race.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because I remember you said some of this section was just like an easy run. So I was like, I'm just on an easy run. Don't need to panic. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's keeping myself calm. And there wasn't, I ran the technical section. I didn't walk any of the race. I didn't hike any of it. I ran all of it. And there's a technical section. And I was like, I felt like I was climbing better than a lot of people earlier on. So I was like, this is where I can, and again, we're going back to climbing. I was like, that's now become a bit of my advantage, but this is where I'm going to make my ground. And then came off the last aid station and I was running down, and Jim had overtaken me, which is amazing having Jim Walmsley come past you in a race. I was like, oh, hi, Jim. And he was like, this is tough, isn't it, in the mud? And I was like, I'm glad you're thinking the same, which was pretty cool on a race experience. And then I was expecting Killian to come past because I thought they'd be like neck and neck. And I turned round and it was Rosanna coming down, like we were into the last hour, and I was like, fuck. Sorry, excuse the French. But I just turned round and I was like, oh God, it's her. Not what I wanted. But I didn't panic. So I was like, Julian, you said like you focus on your own race. That is all you can do in ultras. Like if you focus on your own race and somebody is better than you and they finish better, fair play, end of. Like you can't really worry about that. So I think when she overtook me, I was like, I'm actually going fast enough here. Like imagine the last hour being a steady. It's like I'm actually going fast enough. So hopefully I'll catch her, and she's just gone a bit hard. And then ended up then being quite close to her with like maybe with 4K to go in the race. So it just shows like people have different race strategies, because I was listening to Killian talk about him and Vonson, and he was saying, it was like cat and mouse. And I've done a few races where I've been cat and mouse with people because they might be better descenders, I might be climbers, opposite way round. And it was a little bit like that with Rosanna. And when he said that, I was like, oh, maybe that's just trail racing. Yeah. And it's about not panicking when that happens. And me and Rosanna were obviously both feeling good, but we made our moves at different times because you have slightly different strategies. So it's not going, oh, she's passed me, now I'm defeated and now the body just goes. It's like, oh no, I trust what I'm doing. I'm running quick enough at this point. Still got a good hour to go, and just sit with that, and that's fine. Yeah,
and I saw you at 5K to go because I purposely positioned myself there, and we'd gone before the day again and gone to that point and said, I showed you, I said, this is the 5K to go, Mark.
Yeah, because I'd learned that from the arc, didn't I? I didn't actually know in the arc, I didn't know how long there was to go, and I needed a point.
And I said, this is going to be sort of 25 minutes of your race left from this point. This is where you got to give everything. And the gap was about 45 seconds to Rosanna. She'd opened that gap on you. And I knew it wasn't over because I seen her come past me and I thought, this isn't over. The gap was bigger than I thought it was. I was surprised she had that gap because you looked pretty good at the previous aid station. So I knew she'd gone hard in that section. But when she passed me, I was like, she's not actually moving faster than you. And I remember saying to you, it's not over this. I was like, absolutely not. I said, just give everything for this 5K and close that gap. But what people didn't see on the video is that gap didn't close till right near the end. So if you just talk us through, like, when you closed the gap and got back with her, and then what was going through your mind up that final climb, because it was a heck of a climb, by the way. People saw it on social media. It doesn't really do it justice, but it was a heck of a climb back into the town centre, and then what it was like running through the town centre and into the finish.
Yeah, I think so. With 5K to go, I thought it was a runnable 5K, even though it was uphill. And then part of the first bit when you hit the road was you hit a road and you did like, I don't know, 800 meters on that. And then you went back into the woods. It seemed to be the theme of Chianti. And then you hit some quite rocky, like a really rocky climb actually. And I saw her at the top of this rocky climb before you come out and then wind your way into Rada. And I thought, I'm still climbing strong. Like I've got my climbing legs and she's still moving well here. And then there was like a traily dirt path road up to a house, and I could see her. And then part of me did think, oh, just you know, she's got it, it's fine. And then I was like, no, I was like, come on. So not another sprint finish. I seem to be renowned for that. But one thing I have been taught is that like you do fight into like the finish. Like a race is a race, and I'm a racer, and that's what I do really enjoy. So if I'm gonna race it, I'll race it into a finish. So I guess I knew from a bit early on that my climbing was stronger, like she was stronger on the descents. So I did exactly as you said. I backed myself and quietly had that confidence, and I basically got to just under a mile, and I was like, I'm probably and I don't have loads of outward confidence, but I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm probably the fastest miler, or like I'm faster than her over a flat mile. So use that flat mile speed and fitness up a hill. And then you came out of the woodworks. And so I'd just overtaken her, and you'd been on another section of the course lost, thinking it was the...
I went wrong.
So you nearly missed it, and you were like, where is she? And I was like, what do you mean, where is she? And she was only just behind. And then you really helped me by saying, like, imagine. So this is where you take the stuff that you do in training, like the psychological stuff. So last 5 minutes on a treadmill, uphill treadmill rep is really hard. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, imagine that you're in that last 5 minutes on this. But it was, I guess because I paced it well, and I would say I paced it well, I had the legs to be able to do that. So if you don't have the legs, sometimes you don't have the legs. It's a long way. Like I never thought I would be doing that in the last 5K or last mile of a 47-mile race. I thought I'd be jogging through the line, just enjoying it. And then it was just incredible coming into Rada. People cheering. The crowds were there because Jim had just finished, so I was very lucky, and Killian obviously was on his way, so got amazing crowds. It was an epic finish, but didn't stop to high five people, and I felt bad on this one guy, but it's because I've been brought up to get to that finish line, and I didn't know how far she was behind me. I didn't want to look. I did look behind initially, but I didn't want to look behind when I got there. And I was just like, get me to that finish line, because I don't want someone to overtake me in the last 2 seconds of the race. Yeah,
I'm not sure you've really seen the people who were trying to high five you. You were so focused on getting to the finish line, because I was obviously behind, following up the hill. Yes, and I had a disaster. I'd run too far down the hill. I was following the route outwards and then realised, shit, I better turn back before I miss them. But yeah, it was quite the finish. Actually, a really good finish line, Chianti, and that's quite epic. Magical about the mountains is they take you often into the town and you finish there. And I think that was a really special finish line, which was great. And added bonus and having Jim Walmsley there cheering you through the line, which is
and
crazy.
Caroline Paletti, who's one of the founders of UTMB. I mean, I literally crossed the line, and you probably Catherine. Is it Catherine? Yeah, Catherine. So did I say Caroline? You realise, I realise I'm a huggy person, but I think I just took the tape, dropped to my knees, and then just leant on her and just had a massive hug, and it was so nice. But I was like, fair play to you. You've created all this and been at it for years, and you're there on the finish line, and you care about the sport. I was like, that's pretty cool. And UTMB can get a lot of bad stick about things. But yeah, I mean, for me, that race day was one of the most memorable runs of my life. And to see the founder at the finish, she obviously cares so much about the sport. It was pretty cool.
I'd seen her on the course the day before, checking the course out, which, is, the UTMB, they get some stick, and, fair if you want to give them that, but sometimes you don't know the full people behind the brand. Every single race I've been to, UTMB race, she's been there, whether it's been Switzerland, whether it's been the UK, whether it's been where else have we been, France, Italy, and now Italy twice. Every single one. She's Sweden. She's been at them all. So, quite amazing that she travels around to see all her races unfold. Well, it was a brilliant ending, of course. One that you probably didn't expect. I said to your parents in the car when we were driving around, if everything goes well today, I believe she can win it. But you can't, as you quite rightly pointed out, you can't control what other people do. So you never know how they're going to run. I thought Rosanna was exceptional. And yeah, it was a very good race all the way to the end. It wouldn't have been as exciting if you'd have just ran away. So in some ways it was good in that respect, although it's not good for the nerves. It's certainly not good for the heart.
But I think I wanted to say this because I think this is a bit of a learning. So I said to you, leading into the race, I was probably the calmest I've ever been. And sometimes that is obviously having you, but my parents around me, because you kind of switch off. Like reading has become a big part of a few days into the race. I go into a different world with books, and that's really important for me. But one thing, I say this to my athletes, and I learned it a few years ago when I did a marathon, and I was like, whatever happens today, when you look into the mirror in the morning, whatever happens today, I'm still the same Gemma as I was this morning, regardless. And people that love me will still love me. And I think that's an important reminder for other people and myself. It's like we put so much pressure on ourselves, but it doesn't really change who you are, like whether you have a good run or a bad run. And we always need to remember that. And I think I've just learned so much how the psychological side can really help. And yes, I get nervous. Like, don't get me wrong, I was nervous. But for some of the ultra races as well, I just realized, like, people get really nervous on the start line, but I just said to myself, I've got 47 miles to figure this out. I was like, a 5K is different, but even with a 5K, you have time. You have more time than you think. But I was like, I've got a lot of time to figure this out. So just kind of keep this nervous energy down and just once you get into the race, you know that all goes, and then you can figure things out as you go. And, you know, it was a course that was ridiculously muddy, very technical climbs and descents that were worse because of the mud. And that's probably hard for me if I look at it and go, gosh, I'm going into that. But it shows what you can navigate and how much the mental side of things also plays into it.
Well, that's a really nice place to end. A really nice message to all our listeners. But you were different, Gemma. You were a lot muddier. You were filthy when you finished that race.
It's like a slip and slide on that first descent.
It was crazy how muddy and boggy it was. But no, that's a really nice message to end it. And we won't go any further because I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast to talk all things summer when we head into the summer. And I also know if people want to delve a little bit more into Chianti itself, you're also going to do an episode with James on the Run Through Trails podcast. But I wanted to kind of come at this from the coach-athlete angle, and I feel like we've done that pretty well today. So hopefully people have been able to take a lot away from that as well. Yeah. So thank you. And I should say well done. I do say well done.
Well done to you as well, coach.
So well done. Yes, hopefully that gives you all a bit of an insight into the coaching strategy, how we prepared for Chianti, the reflections of the race, also how things don't always go according to plan. You've got to adapt, especially to conditions, and also how you have lots of ups and downs within the race. Excuse the pun, because not just the undulation, but mentally have lots of ups and downs as well. And that's coming from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
So coming right at you from Gemma. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all again very, very soon.